Hi, I'm Anne Marie from Teacher to Teacher Help. In this video, I'm going to show you an editing tool that you can use to differentiate for the writers in your classroom who might be at various levels with their editing skills. The tool that I'd like to share with you is called a personal editing checklist or personal proofreading checklist. And I first learned about it from Nancy Atwell in this book, Lessons That Change Writers. And in this book, she describes a lesson that she teaches her students where she differentiates for the editing skills of her students. So each student has a personal their own personal proofreading checklist. And on it, she has everyone write three things. And the first three things are obvious stuff, she calls it. And obvious stuff is going to be different depending on the level of your students. She was working with 7th and 8th graders. So some things that have been obvious to them were things like capitals at the beginning of sentences and ending punctuation, capitalizing proper nouns. So for you, depending on the level of your students, you can decide on what that obvious stuff is. And then the second thing that she had all students do was focus on spelling. So no matter what level of writer we are, there are always going to be some words that we're not quite sure the spelling of them. So to help our students with that conventions consciousness, I have another video where I talk specifically about that. We want students to circle any of the words that they aren't 100% sure how to spell, and then make sure that they look those up when they're editing. And then a third one is to capitalize the first, last, and important words in a title. So those were the three that she chose for her students that everyone had to check for. Beyond that, every student's checklist became different. So for some students, it might be easier skills than what your grade level is because they still haven't mastered those. For others, it might be more advanced skills, or maybe it's on grade level skills. Here's an example of what one of her students' checklists look like. And you can see that there's a variety of grammar and convention skills on here, but it came out of students' own writing. As she's conferring with them, she's noticing things that they have not mastered, that they don't have automaticity over in their drafts. And so that becomes an item that she adds during conferring time to their list. And then that becomes something that they edit for all the time. So one child's checklist is going to look different than another. And then she adds an extra piece to that. So you might have your students edit their work before they turn it into you and add an editing checklist. I really like this. She has blank editing checklists, and she asked her students to paperclip this to the top of their paper when they turn it in, but notice that it's blank. And so this is a place for students to write in what did they edit for. So instead of just giving everyone a blanket editing checklist and everyone does the same thing, there might be a couple of things that you want all of your students to check for, but then everything else is differentiated, and it's based on the assessment you've done by conferring with your students and noticing what they do not have mastery over, what they're not using with automaticity in their drafting, because that's what we're editing for, what we missed in our drafts. So for example, if I am writing a piece and I have a lot of dialogue in there, I know how to use dialogue and quotation marks, but maybe I have to stop and think about where to put my paragraphs, or when a new person is speaking. And I want to just get my ideas down the first time, but when I go back to edit, I want to edit for that because maybe I don't have that with automaticity as I'm drafting. So that's going to be different for each of your students. You decide. So together with them, you create this individual proofreading list, but then your students can show you what they edited for on a sheet like this. So I'll have a link for you where you can download one of these editing checklists and invite you to differentiate for your students, not just at the teaching level, but even at the editing level, what we're expecting them to edit for in their own individual writing.